He has been very supportive of us, trying to help develop the sciences. And he's particularly supportive of young people. And our center is all about young people. Most of the people in the center, faculty and students. So he's passionate about young people. And we are happy that he's here, that before he leaves office, he gets to see some of the progress that we're making. So I want you to join me in welcoming the Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana.
Thank you. I used to admire Gordon a lot until I heard him crucify in the French language. I think in future, before we make you director of any unit in the university, you have to learn French.
Mexico.
Thank you very much, Gordon. As Gordon said, I will soon be leaving office. I have 17 more days to go. And these days I look forward instead of backwards. I look into what I will be doing after 17 days, and I started preparing for that. Last Friday, I gave a talk at Ibadan on research universities in Africa. And then yesterday at BITS University in Johannesburg, we were talking about the future of science. Of course, you're wondering why the economists should study the future of science in Africa. And at lunch, sitting with the next expert in biodiversity, he said to me, "Why are you doing this?" Which forced me to reflect why I'm doing it. And listening this morning to Gordon, I saw everything. I saw everything fall in place why we're doing this. Gordon showed figures at the beginning of the presentation that indicated how far back Africa was compared to all the other regions of the world. Effectively, our research output is quite negligible. And we produce only about 1% of all the total research that is done in the world. And when I spoke in Ibadan last Friday, I said to them, there's no way we're going to transform Africa if we don't do the kind of research that is going to lead to transformation. If we don't do research, whether it's in agriculture, it's in health, or the social sciences and so on, if we don't do the research, that will bring about innovation. We can forget about the future. So research has to be done. If I'm supporting science, not because I like scientists so much, it's because it's a sensible thing to do. You can't afford to ignore science and expect your economy to work. It's not going to happen. So it's a very common sense approach to the way I look at it. When I leave office, starting from the 1st of August, I'll be running an institution called the African Research Universities Alliance. It's bringing together 16 of the best universities in the region, largely to do what it represents. Increase significantly the number of researches being done by Africans involving Africans in Africa, and also enhancing significantly the quality of the research. So, over lunch with this professor of biodiversity, said, exactly how do you intend to do it? What is making you do it? And I said to him, I get very embarrassed when I go to conferences, international, whether at Oxford or Cambridge or wherever, I find young African representations, and you wonder, why is he here? Or why is she here? That has to change, and it can change. And what this is an example of how it can be done. That's why we support it. What it represents the kind of ideals that I always saw. So partnerships, so we have people from Oxford, from Cambridge, from Pittsburgh, from all over the place. Ghanaians in the diaspora, Africans working in the region, working with us here, and being PhD work. That's the way science should be organized. That's the way scientific research should be managed. So I'm very, very happy that people like Gordon, people like Kajokuram, Sabila Kwaki, and others have worked strongly into this idea and are doing everything possible. It's my hope that the years ahead, we will see Africa move from 1% to about 10%. That's possible. That's possible. I see here many young researchers, quite ambitious, quite industrious, and in that pursuit, I do expect that something is going to change. But like a few years ago, in this university, when you spoke about publications, people were far less interested in the number of publications, and slowly they got into the idea of increasing the number of publications, and then they became less interested in the quality of publications. I'm very, very happy that now there's growing interest, especially among the young scholars that we have, in the quality of their research, the quality of the publications. Today in this university, we discuss predatory journals. We know what they are. We know what they are and what it means for our careers. I'm happy that through units like WABIP, young people will appreciate even better what it means in global community. So I hope that this conference will provide our young Africans here a solid opportunity to build a future in which science and technology become the main instruments for transforming African economy and giving a better life to Africans. Thank you very much.
To the Vice Chancellor, Professor Enezaite, for chairing this morning's function, and also to the Director of WABIP for that very interesting presentation you gave us on the center. Growing up, we used to think that scientists were boring, but the way he's presented it, I think that we followed him and we understand what he's saying. We want to continue with the program, and I would like to call the Director of the Noguchi Memorial Institute for Medical Research, Professor Kojo Koram, to give us some brief remarks.
Thank you, and good morning. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Noguchi and to the first WABIP conference that today. As you've heard where we've come from, it's been exciting over the past couple of years working with the Department of Biochemistry and my colleague Gordon to establish this. Noguchi, for those who probably would like to know a little bit about us, was established in 1979 as a result of a kind gift from the government and people of Japan to build a research institute in memory of Dr. Hideo Noguchi, who was a Japanese scientist who was researching into yellow fever here in the 1920s, 28 or so, but unfortunately died whilst he was doing experiments in Accra here. At the establishment of the medical school in the early 60s, the first dean, Professor Ismond, met Professor Honda, who hailed from Fukushima Medical College. Fukushima is the prefecture, the home prefecture for Dr. Noguchi. They initially established a medical research cooperation between the medical school and the Fukushima Medical College in the 60s and early 70s. And towards the end of the 70s, I think Dr. Honda and a few other colleagues in Japan mooted the idea of establishing the research institute in memory of Dr. Noguchi, and that's what you see here. This was opened in 1979, doing work mainly in infectious diseases. But as was mentioned, as the disease patterns have changed in the country and also across the sub-region, we have begun some work on non-communicable diseases with collaborations at the medical school and also some experimental work in the departments in this place. WABIP, as was mentioned by my colleague, was established with the grant, or in fact, actually a loan to the government and the people of Ghana from the World Bank to establish centers of excellence, and the proposal to do this work in the cell biology of infectious diseases was the one which was sent to World Bank. What we had then was we had started postdoctoral training program here with support from Gates Foundation, And one of the pillars that we put to World Bank was really to support that also as a continuation of what we're doing here now. But that was refused flatly, and in fact that was in a way it was good, because that's what allowed us to be able to put that and other areas like the genetics and things to the Doctors program, and which then became another part of what we're doing. Noguchi basically has always been a research institute. We've had a mandate, or the mandate is to research into disease of public health, as I mentioned. We have a mandate to train young scientists and also to support the health programs of the Ministry of Health. And as was mentioned, when there's Ebola, when there's bird flu, of late there's Lassa. They've even come to ask us about Zika already to find out what we can do about all those things. So we have been doing that and doing the research, but today is the mandate on training, which really is on show. The training has not been that formalized in the sense that none of the students in the university is registered at this place. They get registered at the teaching department, and earlier you get a friend who sent somebody here, or they'll sometimes even ask the students to come and find something to do. We felt this was not very good, and I think one of the things which has come up was Gordon did his master's program here, and when he's been back at the teaching department, felt that we needed to formalize this better than what we've been doing. And a good idea was to establish a center where we bring in all those things. So we have the teaching and we have the research. And what is mentioned, we have a whole suite of other areas and other research things which will also be done here. Some of the students are here, some of the fellows are going to be here. So it's an exciting thing that we're doing. And as we step out and people like Gordon take over, we're quite happy that things will change from what we met. To be able to give people, especially, I'm very passionate about the postdoctoral programs, because you arrive with your PhD and you're giving, not even a lab, you're giving a desk and says, this is where we are, and you wonder what you're going to do. But at least now we're beginning to protect 2-3 years of time with some support. It's not as good as we would want, but at least it gives you time to think through your research and your ideas and things. And also dirty your hand. You order things, your PhD things, you call the store or something and things is in your lab in a few seconds or a few hours or so. You order things and you have to sit for some 6 weeks and you have to find out how you're going to use that time and things like that. So hopefully we'll be able to cut down on some of those things also as we progress into this area. And I'm hoping that today we'll be able to showcase what has gone on in the past couple of years as we began this. So let me welcome you again to the place, and I hope that you'll hear some stories and some good things from the students and the fellows that we have. Welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Koram. It's time for the official opening of this conference, and to do that for us, I have the pleasure of inviting the World Health Organization country representative, Dr. Owen Kalubi. Please let's welcome him.
Thank you very much, the Director of Ceremonies and the Chair of this session. And I think at this point I should say all protocol observed, because there are many highly distinguished personalities in the field of health, in the field of research that have been introduced here. So I recognize all of you and recognize also the students who showcase the work that they have been doing. I'm glad to be here and to be invited here to make very brief comments, albeit at short notice, and also to get us going in this very important conference. The the theme that has been selected for this conference, which is improving health through advanced research and training, in my view, is very befitting indeed. As it has been mentioned, we are still experiencing very high burden of communicable diseases, particularly in Africa here. But at the same time, we're undergoing the epidemiological transition and getting high and higher burden and increasing burden of non-communicable diseases. As if that's not enough, we have a lot of emerging and re-emerging infectious diseases and disease outbreaks that we have to address, that take our time and our health systems away to focus on other conditions and weaken very much our ability to provide health care. So indeed, to address all these problems, we need research, we need innovation, we need up-to-date or cutting-edge information that will keep us ahead of the various pathogens and the various risk factors that predispose us to the various disease conditions. In fact, research and innovation is one of the key core actions of WHO. We put very emphasis on that as an organization, knowing that our interventions must be based on solid scientific evidence. And that evidence, as much as possible, should be locally generated so that it answers specifically the problems within a particular setting. It has been said already that in Africa we are still quite behind in the area of research, and yet we have most of the problems here. So I really commend this kind of effort of networking and bringing various institutions with different capacities to work together to focus on the problems that face us. Our global leaders have committed to the Sustainable Development Goals. And one major goal for that, which is goal number 3, specifically focuses on health. Within that, there are a specific number of infectious diseases, including HIV, TB, malaria, which are earmarked for elimination, if one can say that, because the targets are looking at ending these diseases by 2030. It looks very ambitious, and indeed it is, but I think it should encourage us and spur us to do more, spur us to find the solutions, to find better ways of understanding our diseases, of diagnosing them, treating them, and preventing them. And for us to do that, we really need research and innovation. We talk about universal health coverage with quality services, that everybody should have access to the health care they need of good quality without suffering financial catastrophe in doing so. For us to ensure quality health service, and therefore better health outcomes, we need research to inform the kind of interventions that we should have in place that will ultimately result in improved health. So these are some of the reasons why it's so important that we should focus on research. Not only focus on it, but also build the capacity of our young and bright minds to do research that will contribute to our work in health. That we need to improve our health, and we need research. Without it, we will not move a step further than where we are and achieve the many goals that we have put aside for ourselves. But one major issue that I need to state before I end my brief remarks is that research is useful if can be translated or is translated into policy and programming. If we do it, we share it and we leave it there, we will not change or contribute to improving our lives. So it's very important that as we do research, pertinent research to work with the problems that we have, we should also be focusing on how we move, close the gap between research, policy, and programming. So that the research does in fact impact people's lives. So at this point, I would like to thank very much the organizers, to thank the partnerships, everybody who's working very hard in this important area, and also to thank very much the students who will be showcasing what they are doing. And remember, the things that you've been doing are very important in that in one way or the other, it will contribute to the knowledge that is necessary to improving human lives. And at the end of the day, I think that's what unites all of us across all the sectors. And what we do, that we need to contribute to the improvement of human lives and well-being of our people. So at this point, permit me to say that we can have the workshop open, and I wish you all the best and fruitful deliberation. And I know that the work you are doing is very critical to the lives of people in our continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kalua. Before we take the keynote addresses, please permit me to acknowledge the presence of some people who are here with us. We'd like to acknowledge the presence of Dr. Constance Batplanch of the National Malaria Control Program. We have representatives of the Association of African Universities here. That's from AAU. Thank you very much. Representatives from the World Bank Unit, Ministry of Finance. We also have some of our officials from the University of Ghana who I'd like to acknowledge. We have here with us the Provost of the College of Humanities, Professor Samuel J. Mensah. The Dean of the School of Medicine and Dentistry, Professor Jennifer Welbeck. Acting Dean of the School of Physical and Mathematical Sciences, Professor Robert Kingsford Adabo. Was here a few minutes ago. And Professor Isabella Kwachi, who's a former Dean of the School of Public Health. We'd also like to acknowledge sponsors who are sponsoring this conference: Inkaba Biotech West Africa, Caramore, MEC, MES Equipment, and Casaprec. Thank you very much for making this program. It's time for us to listen to our keynote speakers. The first keynote address will be by Professor Keith Gull from Oxford University, and he will be speaking on capacity building for health research in Africa. Please join me in welcoming him.
Can you hear me? Yes. You can probably hear me without the microphone. I teach 300 medical students in Oxford, so one projects. Okay, well, it's a great pleasure to be here. I'd like to start off with congratulations, because I first came to this university, I guess, 11, 12 years ago, and I've seen a spectacular change. So, Vice Chancellor, many congratulations. I, for one, have noticed the changes that have happened. Now, I'm going to talk about capacity building for health research in Africa. But I'm going to take a slightly idiosyncratic view of it. I'm certainly not an expert in this area, but I'm a keen observer of what works and what doesn't work. The other issue that I'd like to cover is I'll make some allusions to what happens in Britain, because we're still capacity building. So it'll never end. Don't think you'll get there, right? Okay, because we definitely haven't solved it, as I'll try and point out. And I think really it's about your solutions and not the importation of our solutions, which will move the lever here. Now, what is this one here? Okay, fine. I'm not going to fill you with facts and so on, but I just want you to look at things like this UNESCO Geneva Declaration on the Life Sciences and the Health Research and Development in October 2015, which is a very interesting document to read. All I've picked out is that, and this was focusing on life sciences and health research and development, because obviously of the Ebola epidemic around that time. And UNESCO focused very much in that research summit on this. But I picked out in red some of there's about 3 pages of recommendations. Many of these you'll know. They're pretty familiar. Partnerships, human capital, size of funds available, interactions, long-term, conducive legal and administrative frameworks, strengthening engagement for development of life sciences, more efficient health policies, protect intellectual property, well-funded centres of excellence, international organisations involved in capacity building, international collaboration and knowledge transfer, cooperation with the authorities, networking, private sector, stakeholder partnerships, etc. They're all words that you've heard many, many, many times before. That doesn't mean to say they're not correct. It just says to remind ourselves there are many declarations. The issue is now moving the lever on the things that I think we all know actually need to happen. And there's a lot of capacity building out there. If you go to the web, you can pick up within minutes a whole series of websites which have capacity building initiatives from the Royal Society here and DFID in Britain, the Government Organisation for International Development, Circle visiting fellowships in the environment, African research leaders development, etc., etc., etc. So there's a huge amount of capacity building going on. The big problem, in my view, is that it needs to be more joined up and it needs to be more integrated. And I think one of the things you've seen spectacularly well this morning is the fact that how the University of Ghana, and particularly the biochemistry department and Noguchi, have been able to add value to each one of these developments that they've made and make them catalytic for other developments in the future. And I think that joined upness that you see here and that integrated approach is going to become a paradigm for other capacity building programs. It'll be one of the great strengths that we have to maintain within this program of WACA. What's changed in 30 years that I've been coming to Africa, for me personally, is that now one sees real leadership in African science. One sees African science both led and done by African scientists. That certainly was not the case 30 years ago when I came. It's absolutely the case now. And I think that has made a huge change in the attitude of many people, both north and south. There's both international and national support for science. There's national funding for science is increasing, and the collaborations in science are increasing within the country, as you see here within Ghana, but also internationally. And the coordination of these events is happening. I think one thing to pick out, for instance, that marks that is the real development in the last few years of the African Academy of Sciences, with two major goals. One, the strategy development for science at a Pan-African level, not to take away from African countries that ability to integrate their science and develop it, but to look across the continent. And here, the second one, to provide a platform for large funding initiatives in science across Africa in partnership with a whole range of potential funders, and including international funders, but increasingly to leverage funding from within Africa. And I think the African Academy of Sciences has been increasing its potential to do this. Just reading the newsletter is a useful thing to do every quarter. That's very interesting. And here you see from that newsletter, say, the Mauritius president urging African governments to fund science. Taking this